can hear rubbing hands.
It's Barry's thighs rubbing together, trying to generate heat.
Barry's warm up kind of before every podcast. He like some singers go, ah, Barry rubs his hands.
Bumblebee.
Sorry?
Bumblebee.
Oh, is that the computer you were talking about?
No. If you're a singer, lots of singers use the word bumblebee and do bumblebee up and down the octaves.
Well, I can definitely say that people have either they're very good at guessing or they can actually watch us. Cole asks, no, Cole, we can't ask that. This is even in the preamble. This is a family podcast.
Go on, ask the question because I haven't got Discord.
Are you Roche?
Yeah.
Are you sure it's his hands Barry is rubbing? Is what Cole has asked. Do you see what I mean now? It's just crossed the line. No. Cross the line.
Come on, man! It's lunchtime. Jesus.
Well, that's put me off my food. So... hold on.
Something's gone.
Hang on. Tim's stalled.
Yeah, I had him sort of slowly fade out.
Yeah, it's inevitable, you know. So we're still on. Tim has gone. I think Tim will need to go off and.
It shows you how noisy his mic was because it was almost like a background noise fade there.
Yeah, it's stunning how flaky this damn software still is. One day.
Oh, we did lose him completely.
He's worked it out. Unless he's just taken offence and gone. There's always that possibility.
No.
Tim can lift a fence. Wow. Is he on... may have just lost complete internet connection.
Yeah. I'm sure he'll be back at some point.
Almost certainly.
Probably next Thursday. Oh dear. Good grief. Well, what an exciting week it's been.
Has it?
Not if you're trying to
What
sell technology in America, it's not.
Oh.
I love the various grabs of Mr. Trump saying now is a good time to buy, and then half an hour later the tariffs drop, and I haven't looked into any of it's true. There's lots of conspiracy theories going around at the moment, so I'm not going to say any of this is true, but
I'm not even sure the conspiracy theories.
If they are true, who's going to do anything about it?
Well, the king can't be prosecuted. We've established that.
Oh, my internet has suddenly dropped.
Not you as well. What's going on?
Nothing over Wi-Fi or wired. Oh no!
Well, we're still hearing you, Roche. The song's.
No. I think she's reading Tim's message.
I'm reading Tim's
message.
She's channeling Tim
coming through the ether.
As Mr. Stats, do you have a note of how many weeks there is a correlation between Tim being on the pod and technical difficulties happening? I do actually have a column that states how often someone starts a podcast but does not finish it. Because normally they don't get to vote for hot hardware, so I do have to account for why some of my numbers don't balance. There you go.
Barry, do you want to host this while we figure out how we get Tim back?
Oh, let's give him a couple of minutes. If not.
Oh, okay. Well, in which case,
it's the Easter holidays.
In which case, I'm gonna disappear to give us a few minutes, and then I'll come back.
Okay.
Yeah, Barry and I just going to play charades.
Yeah. I'm just going to skiffle.
Something like that. Are you? Have you got a record store near you, Barry?
In Brighton's probably the closest.
Random question. I know it's record store day on Saturday, as you may have gathered.
It's always bloody record store day.
It is record store
about
day.
6 times a year. That does.
But there's a very nice Bowie release coming out, which is a concert from the Riverside Studios in 1990 something. It's one of the Bowie Net concerts. which has
Yeah.
been out in boot form for many years, but they've finally sort of done the official and polished it off. So if you were passing a record store on Saturday morning, pop yourself in. They're doing it on vinyl and CD, and it's a very, very good recording. Basically, it's the first time he does reality live. There's a few extra bits as well.
Okay. Is that going on the streaming or is it only a physical release?
Record store days, they normally find their way out eventually on the streaming services, but they do try and keep it to the stores for a little bit. Yeah, it's well, I think there's a Nuclear Star on Spotify at the moment from that recording. They promoted it a few weeks ago.
For those who joining us late, welcome to the Enemy Podcast. I'm Dave Lee Travis.
Don't say that, mate. Well, that's us off air then. Tim says he's put coal on the boiler or something.
Okay, I'm back.
It doesn't appear to be too back. It has to be
No.
said.
He's also made Roche vanish, which is impressive.
I had terrible trouble with Roche's audio last week. I was hoping that there was a bit of mic disturbance, and I was hoping it wouldn't pick up on the audio, but it did. Right.
So what are we talking about while we're waiting for Tim?
Record Store Day and David Bowie, apparently.
Oh, okay.
That's a large bottle of gin, Roche.
Apparently Tim's on the cusp of rejoining us, so we'll give him a minute. Sorry, for everybody out there in live land. What can you do, editors? Barry's
No.
more of a Steve Wright in the afternoon. I don't think anyone's more of a Steve Wright in the afternoon these days, I'm afraid.
No. No, a rare beast. I don't think I really appreciated how progressive he was until I sort of listened to some of the programs after he'd gone.
Steve Wright?
Yeah.
Not a big fan, I'm afraid.
No, I was never really a fan, but then I listened to some of the stuff that he was doing, sort of following on from what Kenny Everett used to do with the getting people in and the stupid stuff, and it was just, oh yeah, you realise no one else does that.
Yeah. Right, he's got 1 minute, and then we're getting on with it.
Well, I mean, it's your first story, so he can drop in.
Yeah.
I don't think he comes
Yeah.
in till he's not until story 4, so he's got another half an hour. Story's still flaky. I think that's probably
Can I
just a
just
criticism.
tell you, if that was me, I would, my God, I would be sick with my nerves, and everything would just take me so much longer. So I'm just playing for time. Okay, ready when you are, boys.
Action.
So you need to walk on your warm-up script, Roshi. Right. Good afternoon and welcome to the PC Pro podcast. It is Sunday in April. What is it? 10th of April. Oh my God, it's my other half's birthday and I've just forgotten what date it is. It's also John Honeyball's birthday today because he shares a birthday with my other half. I've just remembered. So happy birthday, John Honeyball. He has the remarkable good fortune of not being with us today. And until about 3 or 4 minutes ago, Tim was with us, but he's vanished down the internet plug hole. So I am joined only for the time being by Lee Grant
Good afternoon.
and Rosh Nahuma.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. So we hope that Tim will eventually reappear, but in the meantime, he in fact, we've just got an update from Tim who says, I've lost connection in my shed, which tells you everything you need to know about the editor's fine technical setup. So talking of fine technical setups, we're going to start this week on possibly the only topic everyone's been talking about, which is tariffs in the US and what impact that's having on the technology industry. So in case you've been on a retreat in Borneo over the past week, Donald Trump was due to impose a whole swathe of tariffs on pretty much every country in the world, the most serious of which were the reciprocal tariffs, so-called reciprocal tariffs, that were being implemented yesterday, which saw countries hit with a seemingly ChatGPT generated list of tariffs that were published last week. The UK was going to get hit for 10%. Other countries were well into the 30s, 40s and 50s, particularly countries in the Middle East where the US perceives a trade imbalance as some kind of tariff that needs to be fixed. Now, when you're talking about technology, this obviously has the biggest impact it has is on products being shipped from the Far East. So if China, for example, is being hit with huge tariffs, and China is, by the way, still being hit with huge tariffs, it's one of the only countries now still on the hit list, then that causes all kinds of problems for tech manufacturers, because a lot of technology is manufactured in countries such as China, Taiwan, and other regions in the Far East. And that creates an enormous amount of uncertainty. If you're let's say, a British PC manufacturer, and you're shipping a lot of components from the Far East, and you don't know what the price of those components will be, or nobody knows what the price of those components will be when you import them, that causes serious harm. So what has been happening, I've been speaking to a number of PC manufacturers this week. Lee's been speaking to distributors in the components industry, and what we've seen was prices climbing, because with the uncertainty of tariffs, people were trying to stock up before the tariff deadline hit, so that they had plenty of stock to fulfill orders they already had. And that was making prices jump by 10-15% for components such as SSDs and RAM, partly exacerbated by shortages in production of those components that were already in the chain. And now, with these potential tariffs coming down the line and the rush to pre-order all this equipment, obviously prices surge up. Components like SSDs and memory are basically sold like commodities. The price varies quite rapidly on an almost daily basis because of supply and demand. Now, what will happen as a consequence of the majority of tariffs being suspended for 90 days? We don't know. But what we do know is China, for the moment, is still being hit by exceedingly high tariffs. I think 120% is the latest figure, but that was 10 minutes ago. It could be 1,000 by now. So nobody quite knows what's going on. And for the British PC manufacturers I spoke to, that obviously causes a great deal of uncertainty, not because they're going to be directly affected by that, because imports into the UK are still not an issue, but because so much of the trade goes into the US. And if those manufacturers have shortfalls, or they've suddenly got to make up for all of the inventory they were expecting to send to the US, then they may have to put their prices up for the EU to counter that short-term balance. So it's a whole heap of uncertainty generated for, you may say, not a great deal of reason. But Lee, what have you found this week?
Just to echo what you said there, I mean, personally in the shop, I've been doing some system builds, and bear in mind, I am absolutely micro business here. So, I dread to think what Dell's and they're going through, but just high prices on RAMs and SSD. But the main problem is lack of stock, because people have basically panic bought anything that isn't nailed down. So trying to get various components at the moment is really tough in certain categories. So that causes issues for the suppliers who have tried to grab anything they can to keep the price down. That stuff all now seems to have gone. And so the next load of stuff that's going in, a lot of my suppliers are sort of saying the next stuff is coming in sort of 60 days. And who knows what the price will be. They've got a rough guess on what they think it will be, but as this story changes by the hour, and depending, as Barry said, depending on which bit of the Far East it has come out of and what the pricing structure of whatever down the supply chain has decided to sort of how they've decided to tackle the tariffs, it's really not a great time to be buying computing components. And this is exacerbated, of course, is because everyone at the moment is trying to work out what the heck they're going to do as far as Windows 11 goes and getting off Windows 10. So it's not a good time in computer retail. But we've been through these sorts of absolute messes before, and we'll just have to sort of hang on and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, don't want to spoil too much of the PC Pro news story that's coming in a couple of weeks in the magazine, but one of the PC manufacturers I spoke to said that this was very much like COVID all over again. Nobody's quite sure what's happening. The uncertainty is immense. And, he was saying it could be the best thing that's ever happened to them in terms of potential, stock overflows coming from China that they can't sell in the US, or it could push up prices that make their systems unsellable. So it's a real challenge. Rose, what have you made of it all?
Well, it's just to your last point, actually, that if America isn't taking it, then there's an opportunity for the rest of the world to go in. China hasn't. Do you know what I mean? Because this has all happened so fast. It's not like China took its foot off the gas of its manufacturing in anticipation for this. It needs to get rid of it. It's better off that they shift the stuff, even if they do it at a discount. And a discount to them still could mean profit. So look, there is opportunity in chaos. Look, I don't like this guy, but I don't think that his sort of like wild swinging from right to left isn't without some kind of commercial opportunity for people who are in a position to be able to move quite quickly. And so what I've seen with respect to the sanctions, and this is beyond the technology, is that you've got people in Denmark who are like shutting down everything that's American, right? So they're shutting off all kinds of stuff like Apple TV, Netflix, and so on. And okay, that might not be a dent, but then it may be an opportunity for others. Canada is doing the same with, foods, and the Canadians are noticing that there's actually an upsurge in the purchasing of domestic products. So look, I don't think it's a stroke of genius. I don't think the guy is playing three-dimensional chess. I think he's a merchant of chaos, but I think that there may be an opportunity there.
So, Lee, we've talked about what's happening UK-wise. What are you seeing happening in the US, where, in particular, the China tariffs are still very much a thing?
Yeah, well, I've got a couple of stories for you just to, I guess, really explain and encapsulate on a real-world basis about what we've just been talking about. So, and I'll just re-caveat this. We're recording this on a Thursday lunchtime, so who knows really what Trumpelstiltskin will have done by the time you get the downloaded version. So I'll start with Nintendo, because the huge news from Nintendo over the past few weeks has been the announcement of the Switch 2. This is big news. It will soon be available for pre-order in the UK and Europe. Some people have already got it at the moment. But if you're listening to this in the US, then you're bang out of luck at the moment, because the pre-orders were meant to open yesterday, the 9th, but Nintendo have delayed this, saying, and I quote, "in order to assess the potential impact of tariffs and evolving market conditions." The launch date is still meant to be the 5th of June. And at the moment, that's unchanged. But Nintendo have said they will update this later. Now, this really is unfortunate for them. Now, I've not had my hands on one of these yet, but I am a Switch 1 user, so I've sort of got half an eye on this. But from the reviews I've seen, it seems to be a good product, but it's not going to set the world on fire. It's a bit bigger and a bit more powerful, but it's also got a massive, great price tag. And this is before prices or sort of any tariffs have come onto it. So this whole situation is not really ideal for someone like Nintendo, because this is a big deal to them. They've got lukewarm reviews, tariffs are causing aggro, etc. So we'll see what happens with them. However, if you are in the market for the Switch 2, one thing I have noticed is the new controllers use Hall sensors, so you shouldn't get Joy-Con drift. I'll just throw that in there. Another company that's been really, I've been really impressed with their transparency has been Framework. About a month ago on episode 733, we discussed their new releases. Now, their story has changed several times. Their CEO, Nirav Patel, is very, because they're not a big company, he's very customer facing, and put out a big, lengthy blog post night before last. I'll link it to the show notes, because it really is as open and transparent as you'll get from any CEO about what they're going through at the moment. And basically they said, and bear in mind this is a couple of days ago, with 32% tariffs on Taiwan in effect, we've increased system pricing for US customers by 10%, and for now we're absorbing the remaining tariff costs. And basically for other things, they're pausing their sales to the US. And he explains in great detail about how their main boards, their bezels, their components some are made in Taiwan, some are made in China, and this is all kicking them in different areas. The beautiful thing about framework as a modularity, and they come out saying our Western digital storage is manufactured in Malaysia, which now faces a 24% tariff. And they basically recommend just don't buy storage from us, get it from somewhere else, buy the DIY edition and get it somewhere else. It's the beauty of framework, they can do that. Now, since then, of course, they've been very open and said, look, this has changed, this is now back on. And last night they said, because the Taiwan tariffs is back to 10% for 90 days, so they're reverting back to the original prices. But because some of the stuff is in China and that's still elevated, these things are off the table. And they're trying to launch new products as well. You know, pre-orders for the Framework 12 open last night, and they're being very open and saying, pre-order it, we'll take a deposit, and we'll confirm the price later when we're near to launch in July, because they absolutely haven't got a clue what's going on as far as final pricing goes. So they're really being very open about what we're trying to do. They haven't got I don't imagine Framework, we've got the sliver of the resources that Acer and Lenovo have done to weather this. So that telling customers the truth really is always a smart move. Because you get to slightly bigger laptop manufacturers. Razer, they've paused direct sales of some of their US devices. There was the Blade 16. Apparently their web presence went from pre-order to notify me to 404 not found in a matter of hours. But this can be still ordered in the EU and other regions. And it goes on and on. Even places like firms that we really wouldn't talk about normally, like Haas, the Formula One team, but they also do massive tooling and things like that. They've stopped recruitment. They've stopped all this, that, and the other in California. It's really a bit of a pickle out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading some comments on Discord, where you can join us live every Thursday at 1 p.m. at pcpro.link/Discord. And talking about, potentially routing via different countries with a lower tariff. And this certainly came up in my conversations with PC manufacturers this week. And the problem is that nobody, including the US administration, has yet to properly define for a product like a PC, where you have components coming from different places of origin, how they apply that tariff. So are you going to be charge enormous tariffs on the components that only come from China? Are they going to say this percentage of the product comes from China, so we're going to apply the entire tariff to the entire product? Nobody knows, and this is part of that uncertainty that all of these companies, and you must think, as Lee said, you've got the likes of Razer and whatever. I understand from reading reports that the likes of Dell and HP were literally ordering extra aircraft to ship stuff out of China this week to make sure they had a sufficient inventory in the US to avoid tariffs before the deadline came in. So nobody knows is the problem, and that uncertainty is causing enormous problems for companies who, as you say, want to price stuff that's going to be launching in 3-6 months' time and can't give you a price. And ultimately, that's largely going to end up hurting American consumers as much as anybody.
There was a bit of nonsense. I don't know if you saw this, just slightly tangentially. The US Secretary of Commerce, a guy called Howard Lutnick, and he went on Fox News, and some may call it a rant, or they may call it hallucination, I guess. And he was talking of a world sort of defending what was going on, where basically the iPhone was made in the US. And he was talking about the army of millions and the trade craft of America and etc. And I took a deep breath there, because Mr. Danton has just re-arrived. Are you here, Tim?
I am. Well, I hope I am. Let's just see what happens, because it's a terrible thing when suddenly your internet disappears. It's kind of like having free trade around the world for, 50 years or so, and then suddenly it disappearing. But do carry on with whatever you were saying.
Lovely little segue there. Lovely little bit of business.
Thank you. Bounce me back. And there's. So it's the US Secretary of Commerce was very, as you would expect, sort of cool with this whole thing, and we're saying that this was going to be the making of America, and Americans were going to make everything, and all these high-tech factories coming to America. And it reminded me again of this US iPhone dream that they've been talking about for many, many years, and and then I got thinking about the next launch of the iPhone, would be the 17, won't it? And given how things are going at the moment, I mean, this might even be a price that John Honeyball might blanch at.
Yeah, this idea, again, that they can just ramp up manufacturing in the US to compensate for the products coming out of China is a complete fantasy in the short term, because there is no meaningful way. They don't have the raw materials, they don't have the skilled labor force, they don't have the factories. You can't just build an iPhone factory overnight or in a matter of months. These things take years. And as much as Apple and others have sort of made these faint commitments to increase manufacturing in the US, none of that's going to happen in an immediate time frame. So by slapping these huge tariffs on China still, they're going to create some short-term turbulence unless a deal can be struck. But perhaps it's time to stop talking about Mr. Trump and maybe hand the floor back to El Editor over there.
Well, where have you got to in the agenda? Have we actually got past point 1 yet?
Yeah, we've done 1 and 2. We're on to 3.
Well into 3, okay. In that case, I'll quickly pass the buck over to Roche.
Okay, great. Right, so before we dive into what's happened, let's just do a quick catch-up, sort of like a previously on Reacher type effort. Okay, so you'll remember back in February, the Home Office issued technical technical capability notices to Apple and to a whole host of other tech companies. And essentially what they were doing was that they were demanding backdoors in their products. For Apple, that meant putting a backdoor into their cloud storage, their advanced data protection. And they said, no, they said, we don't do backdoors. We don't want to do backdoors because if we'll build a backdoor, it could eventually be exploited by hackers or by criminals who will either figure it out or find it. So now there's a good reason to believe that they would find it, sidebar, because we've seen this happen before. So you'll remember back in 2016 when a group called the Shadow Brokers broke into the NSA, and then they took a whole toolkit which included Eternal Blue, and then Eternal Blue was used and weaponized to create NotPetya and the other one. Okay, WannaCry. There we go. So we can't be under any illusions that this backdoor would somehow stay secure, and there's nobody in any agency is in a position to give us that kind of an assurance. Okay, so Apple, quite reasonably, taking that view, says better not to build it, but they still have to comply. And in order to comply, what they did was they said, we are not going to make this encrypted cloud storage, this advanced data protection available in the UK. But things did not stop there. So this is what this judgment is about. Now, this week, sorry.
For those listening, Roche looked side by side in a confused manner.
You know, I thought I could hear my own voice coming back, and I thought this is so annoying. So I don't know where the interference is coming from, but we're good. Okay. So
it's the NSA. That's what it is, Roche. The NSA are listening to what you're saying, and they're playing interference because they know what's coming next.
I like the fact you looked over your shoulder and was surprised to see no one there. Sorry.
Okay, so all right, setting the paranoia aside. The Investigatory Powers Tribunal this week rejected the government's demands for complete secrecy over Apple's legal challenge. Now, that's not to say that there's full transparency, and it is a small victory, but it's still a victory. So the court heard arguments from the Home Office that even the bare details of this case would be prejudicial to national security, and this is where the win comes in. So Apple, with some support from the counsel to the tribunal, argued that the Home Office's concerns were overblown and unjustified. That's pretty salty language to read in a document in a judgment. So Apple argued that the principle of open justice favored information about judicial proceedings. And they said the judges wrote, in the absence of compelling reasons to the contrary, we agreed with the claimant, Apple. It would have been a truly extraordinary step to conduct a hearing entirely in secret without any public revelation of the fact that a hearing was taking place. They continued, that would be the most fundamental interference with the principle of open justice. It would require a correspondingly compelling justification. We don't rule out that there's a possibility that there may be exceptionally rare cases where such a step can be justified on the evidence. This is not such a case. So all of that is really telling, and it begs the question, what is this government up to? Tut, tut, tut.
don't you think it's up to the same thing that all governments are up to, Roche? Because it's trying to guard its own privacy. It's trying to you know, I kind of work on the assumption that every single government around the world basically snoops on its own people, despite what it may say to the otherwise, as we very much found out with the Edward Snowden revelations. So this is what happened, and you've just got to be absolutely. It's
No,
like you've got to
so
understand that someone that's snooping over your shoulder the whole time.
so here's the thing. So I accept that there will be commercial espionage, right? And that business or that company or countries will try to get a competitive edge. I accept that. I accept that governments will snoop on each other, even their allies. We've seen that with Merkel, and it
Yep,
would be naive
yep.
to think that this doesn't happen.
I spy on Barry.
Yeah, but when you're looking at private citizens and you're looking to be able to access their stuff now, this isn't that they could just access it without any safeguards. The trouble is that once you give up this liberty, you're not getting it back. And if they were to do this, if Apple was to do this, say for example, which is one of the complaints of one of the civil liberty agencies that's also like a third party to application to the submission, is that if the UK gets it, then it goes to China, it goes to Iran, it goes to Russia, and it goes to places where actually it's really important that people have privacy. And it's not that we don't have, so if it was really for national security, then we have to go back and we have to reread this bit. So, because the tribunal is saying, look, we would allow this to be done in secret if there was a correspondingly compelling justification, but that is not the case here. So the Home Office has failed in its own argument that this is an issue of national security. And look, here's another thing that we know about how all of these guys operate. They don't need to be able to read the messages. So what would happen with having a back door into this is that you could read the documents and you could see the photographs, but that we know that's not how GCHQ operates, for example. So I'll give you an instance. Sorry. Okay, so the day before 9/11 happened, they had chatter. Now they didn't get that chatter until the day after 9/11, so whatever, 10/11? No,
Yes.
the next day. Okay. So, and the two messages that were in Arabic that were translated, one of them said, the game is on. And then the other one said, 0 day tomorrow, or tomorrow is 0 day. Neither of those is actionable, right? And we know that when terrorists and like the bad guys are communicating with each other, they're not saying, oh, we've got 2 planes leaving here and the hijackers are on them. They speak in ways. And so actually what the intelligence agencies do is that they look to the metadata to build a bigger picture of how these networks are communicating and who's communicating with who. And then let's just say, because I don't really know my terrorists, Osama bin Laden contacts Gaddafi. And then immediately after he speaks to Gaddafi, Gaddafi calls somebody else. That's the kind of stuff, and they don't need to be able to read documents and they don't need to be able to look at pictures for that. And so, yeah, anyway, I'm not buying it. Okay, so
Okay.
let me just return.
No, that's
No.
okay. But just Barry, what is your take on going back particularly to the news breaking this week?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think there's been, we spoke to the privacy advocates a couple of issues ago about this story, and they were saying at the time that they feared that this entire proceedings would be held behind closed doors. So I think it's good that it's out in the open, and there's a sort of open case about this that can be reported on, and we can find the reasons why. And yeah, effectively, it's going to boil down to the same arguments, I think, where they're going to say, look, we need access to this kind of communications to fault counter-terrorism, to fault child abuse images, and will somebody think of the victims, kind of thing. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in court.
Yeah,
at least we will see how it plays out in court.
exactly. I think any government that, just getting a little briefly onto my soapbox, any government that goes against transparency, unless there is an incredibly good reason to it for it, then you've moved too far. Because you've moved. It's like covering up the Colossus secret for 30 odd years. What was the purpose of that? It made sense to a certain extent for 10 years afterwards, but for 30 years, come on, guys. So you just have to, as a government, you have to be held to account. And actually, so what I see here is a good news story, because what we're seeing is that the justice system, the independent justice system in Britain, is actually holding the government to account and bring this into light. And that's where these things need to be. I'm not saying you have to make everything public. By all means, have closed sessions for 15 minutes if you're going over something where you're making an argument about, well, this happened last year, but you don't want people to know about it. Anyway, sorry, off the soapbox, close brackets. Lee, what do you think?
No, I agree. And I think this is another case. Strangely, it goes on to what we were saying last week about AI and copyright and things like that. That there are rules out there and it seems that this time they have been sort of properly applied. I mean, from the very little I understand, for most high-profile courts, there are press seats available and certain accreditations required to be present. There is obviously public stuff, but judges can impose restrictions to prohibit aspects of reporting. It happens all the time, as you said, with criminal causes, particularly those involving children. So it's good to see that my learned friends have had a look to decide that, we should all know a bit more, and, if they can hold things back if they need to hold things back. So it'll be interesting to see what's in there, particularly if there was an instruction to Apple to leave the bathroom window open.
Final question. Could any company other than Apple have held the government to account like this? What do you think, Roche?
Yes, they can. So under the Investigatory Powers Act, it is open to scrutiny. And actually, Apple are not alone. So there's a whole host of media agencies who are also doing it. BBC, FT, Computer Weekly,
PC Pro. No.
Are we?
No. PC Pro is the four of us in this room and your bookcase. That's all we've got.
Telegraph, so yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's shimmy along to the next story because it's actually about video games. Not a comment. Oh, sorry, Roche. Is there something else you want to talk about? Have we covered everything? No. So yes, the next item is something I'm not an expert in at all. I don't know why I'm nominating myself to talk about this, but there has been a story, a list published of the 21 most influential games of all time. Let's keep it humble. And I know I'm going to challenge people on Discord to throw out a few names before I actually reveal the true identity of this. Of the winning game or the winning games. But I'll start giving you a few clues. So it is an open, open world game. It was famous for its cutscenes. I watched a 5-minute video of this.
Tim, have you asked ChatGPT what this game is? Because it has that definite ring to it.
He's avoiding saying its name. We all know where this is going.
And if you will know this game if I say to you, do you know where some sailors are? Because that features quite heavily amongst the popular culture of this. So let's see whether any of these have any people listening on Discord, pcpro.link/Discord, have named it correctly, and I don't think they have.
No, I can't see it.
So the winner, and I'm going to say it pretty incorrectly, is Shenmue. Is that correct?
Told you.
Go on.
Told you. I've no idea either. You're a pronunciation expert.
Barry, you're more of a gamer than I am. What is it?
Yeah, Shenmue, I think was how it was generally pronounced over here.
How did you say it at the end?
Shenmue.
Shenmue. Okay, all right. You swallowed your UA. All right, so that's the name of the game. Oh, well done, Darth. Oh, is that Darth Linux?
They came in on the back. Don't listen to them.
Okay. All right. So anyway, this is a very influential game, apparently, because I still don't really know what it was for, but it was made for Sega Dreamcast. That's where it certainly got its launch. And it's basically this guy walking around this open universe, asking questions, indulging in fights, and there's these quite lavish cutscenes. And the development costs for this were apparently $70 million, and even back in 1999, that had made it a huge investment, I think. But I asked our resident expert on gaming, which is he's not at all resident, but he is an expert on gaming, namely Stuart Andrews, whether because he's written for well, actually he edited them. Did he edit the Dennis Dreamcast title?
Not Dreamcast specifically, but yeah, a gaming title.
Yeah. So yeah, he knows these things very well, and he also thinks this is a load of nonsense. He said, I asked him if he thinks this is correct. He said, no. It strikes me that you've got a lot of people voting without much awareness of gaming history. I get the point about Shenmue's influence in open world games like GTA 3, but I still think games like Elite, The Elder Scrolls, Arena, and Ocarina of Time were more influential there. All right, so Barry, what is your most influential of games, please?
Yeah, I thought you were going to ask that. I mean, it depends. Influential is such a stupid, like, nebulous phrase in terms of, like, what does that actually mean? And I think
it means the one that's influenced all the other games more.
Well, in that case, Shenmue definitely isn't if it is pure influence on other games makers, I would be going for something like SimCity or one of the Sid Meier's Civilization games that basically spawned entire genres rather than a game that, you know, you could say GTA and all those games are a direct descendant of Shenmue, but it's a stretch.
So The Sims comes in at number 10.
The Sims only, I mean, there's literally only a game released last week called Inzoi, which is basically the only other game in the Sims genre. I mean, they've completely battered that entire genre out. So it's not particularly influential, The Sims. I understand why it's on that list, but it hasn't sparked a whole load of copycats. If you're talking about things that have inspired other games developers and what they've copied and put into their own games, if you like I say, I think something like SimCity or Civilization, which is basically like the whole 4 times grand strategy genre has been built from, then I'd say they should be much higher up that list.
Guess where Civilization came in the list? They listed 21 games in full. Guess where Civilization was?
Well, I've got it in front of me, so I know.
That's cheating, Barry. So for those who don't have it in front of them, it wasn't even on the list. Civ
it's crazy.
Didn't even make the list, which does seem absolutely insane. I don't know. This is when the trouble when you have make it open voting, and you just kind of say, "Oh, what's your favourite game?" Basically.
Well, I think also wasn't it BAFTA who did this, or I was a judge on the very first BAFTA Games Awards, and there are some people there who weren't particularly knowledgeable about gaming. Let's put it that way. But I think they've improved significantly over the years.
Are those people wearing stripy shirts right now?
Yes, almost certainly.
Lee, most influential game in your opinion?
Mine is probably Pac-Man. I think it was one of those games where it was the first time I remember. I grew up at the seaside, so I am. This might not seem immediately relevant, but I'm surrounded by arcades. My first tech job was in arcades, so I remember in the sort of 80s and 90s seeing at the time when home computing wasn't great. If you wanted to play a great game with great graphics, you needed to go to an arcade to go and see something like the original Street Fighter and stuff like that. Amazing graphics for the time because they were in a massive great cabinet. The sit-down Star Wars stuff like that. Pac-Man was the first time I remember having something at home that was as good as something that was in the arcade, and and if you think back to, it had its own cartoon series. There was merchandise. It was the first time I remember a game sort of transcending into sort of normal culture, and even possibly before Mario did it. So for me, as far as influential goes, it's Pac-Man.
It's the first game probably where something ate something else as it walked along. Roche, that's the most important thing of all. Roche, what about you?
I don't like. I don't really have a sensible answer for what's the most influential, like globally. But the one, so, because Lee's mentioned arcades, I spent many, many an hour as a, like you go on the hop from school and then you go to the arcade and you had
Hang on,
whack-a-mole,
hang on. You
which,
go on the hop from school. Are you saying you skived off school, Rish?
oh, I started skiving off school in primary. Like, yes,
What?
yeah,
Those books are just a
yeah.
facade in the back.
Yeah.
Oh no,
It's,
yeah,
it's like those
they're not
restaurants.
wallpaper.
Okay, that's a big
I didn't,
revelation.
no, but I didn't. I didn't skive off school every day.
No.
Just occasionally. So yeah, so whack-a-mole, and then of course Time Crisis. I loved
Oh,
Time
Time Crisis,
Crisis.
yeah. Great.
So
That's a great
good,
arcade game.
brilliant. Yeah, but I don't know if it's influential.
Yeah, I don't know. It did so, and it probably was one of the most influential in terms of showing that you could sell expensive accessories to home games. Because I remember those. I'm pretty sure I remember you possibly having one, Barry.
What?
Because one of those, those pretend rifles that you got with
When
the
have
name.
you
I
ever
suddenly
been
forgot
to
its name.
my
Yeah.
house to play computer games?
No,
Anyway,
well,
It's when you chased him out of your yard with a pretend rifle.
he is
okay.
spying on me.
no. So this, I'm going back a long. Remember when you lived in London with Stu, when you shared that flat with Stu?
Well, we had everything when I lived with Stu
Southfields.
because he was testing all the games at the time because he was a games magazine editor. We
Yeah,
had a
okay.
Dreamcast. We were one of the few houses to have a Dreamcast with Shimui on it because we lived with Stu.
Well, there you go. So at least he's talking it from some experience. All right. So let me just tell you, just to clarify, because I don't think I explained it very well at the start. This list was compiled by BAFTA. I think it's actually voted by people, Barry, rather than by.
I hate to break it to you, it's close back.
But I mean, it wasn't a panel of judges. I mean, it was a reader vote, if you like. Oh no, are you shaking your head, Lee?
No, I'm shaking my head in slightly because I think I know where you're going with this. But I spent a lot of time yesterday trying to look for the long list because
Yes.
there is so many criminal omissions from this list. The fact that Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2 are in the top 10 is frankly scandalous and should be a reason that no editor should ever publish this story. In fact, I might even cut this out the edit so it's never discussed ever again. But yeah, I'd love to know the longer version of this list.
Okay, and the second, well, number 2 is worth speaking about. So we'll just speak about this briefly. Doom, influential game or not, Barry?
Yes, very much so in terms of that genre, yeah.
Should this be the winner, Barry?
Certainly higher than Shimui, but I don't know about the winner.
Okay,
Yeah,
Super
'cause
Mario.
it was Wolfenstein on steroids.
True.
Yeah, Wolfenstein came first, didn't it? Was that
Yeah.
the Amiga? I can't remember. Anyway,
See,
yes, Roche.
so I'm not a gamer, but I've played Doom, right? And like Dying Light and Last of Us, and my favorite is Pistol Whip at the moment at the VR headset. Anyway, I'm not like, I'm not a gamer, but I have never
You just said that you were playing games. You're a gamer by definition
like-
if you're playing Pistol Whip, whatever the heck that is.
yeah, but no, like, I'm not.
You're not
Anyway,
Barry.
I'm not a committed gamer. Okay. But I'll know I've never heard of Shamui. Ever. If you had said to me, Roche, what's Shamui? I would have said, oh, is that whale that, was in that Disney film? Do you know? Like if you had told me out of context that word, or I would have thought, oh, is that thing that you do so that the energy flows through your house? I wouldn't have gone, oh yeah, that's the most influential game,
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
I think it's nonsense. Like, no
Okay.
way.
Well,
Number one.
just to end, I will just give you a few nominations or stroke guesses from listeners. Horace Goes Skiing. I always quite like that game. Well, actually, I'm not sure I did. It was quite good. Manic Miner. Sorry, that's James London who said Horace Goes Skiing. Skyloop says, I can't believe Wacky Waiters on the VIC-20 isn't there. Not one I'm familiar with, that one, I'm afraid. GTA is my fave, says Leona. Snake, says James London again. Having many games he is fond of, clearly. Call of Duty 2 made me buy an Xbox. Oh god, that's James again. I'm just reading these randomly, but James is clearly very keen on this particular story. And Paul Riley says, whenever I come onto Discord, Barry is playing Rocket League. Barry?
Oh, yeah. Only if he's coming on between like 12:15 and 12:45 when I'm normally playing over lunch. But yeah, I am a
Okay.
big Rocket League fan.
And the final comment comes from Running Dak, who says, "Are the stripes meant to be slimming?" That's over to you, Barry.
Oh, that's harsh.
Then
Yeah,
second
and I've met James Eldier, and he bought me a pint of Guinness, so that's he's to blame for half of this figure.
Okay, all right. Let's move along to the nibs, shall we? The safer area of nibs. And who is beginning with this one? It is, as I scroll down, Roche. It's you.
Okay. I hate this story. It should be called Man Blows His Credibility with the Judge by Fudging the Truth. But the headline reads, Man uses AI avatar to address the court. So in the story, a claimant in a dispute with his former employer made an application to the court to submit video testimony. He said he couldn't do lengthy oral submissions. They were too difficult because he'd had throat cancer 25 years before. This is important. The judge hit play on what she thought was a video, but it was actually not a video testimony. It was an avatar that the claimant had generated, and that was speaking the words that he had written. Now, this is the point where you may well ask two questions. One, I thought this was supposed to be nibs. No, the question you may well ask is, why didn't he just provide written testimony? Just, there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Have at it. And the reason is because he has a startup that uses generative AI, he says, to help litigants who are unrepresented navigate the US legal system. Well, here is a thing for you. This guy can't even navigate a single courtroom. The judge shut him down and booted him out. There you go.
There we go. Yep, nice. Okay, nib number 2 is going to be shorter. No, actually, do you know what? I'm not having a dig rush because actually that you summed it up really well. So this is that IBM has launched a mainframe built for AI. Yeah, because that's what everyone's waiting for, obviously. I must admit, it does sound very impressive because I listened to it. I went to the pre-briefing, etc. So I had the full deluge of information. And I'm sure it will do amazing things. And the main thing it'll do is for bigger organizations. So this is not for your SME. It's not for you, Lee, to install in your computer shop, I'm afraid. But it will allow you to effectively run AI tasks locally. So you don't have to worry about booting off data to some dodgy server that's probably being run on the iCloud. So this is coming later this year. It is called the IBM Z mainframe, and it comes with IBM built AI accelerators. So none of that NVIDIA guff, called Spire AI. And you can have up to 48 of these added to your system. So anyway, the idea being, finally, AI coming to a mainframe near you. And that goes on sale in June. Who has got the final nib? It's you, Lee.
Last year, we reported that Meta was bringing teen accounts to Instagram. Well, the rollout has now continued and to Facebook and Messenger. These types of accounts are designed for young people 13 to 15, and they have sort of a standard privacy setup, such as disallowing interactions with unknown contacts or the ability to tweak settings without parental input. Now, parents can also monitor usage and friends list too. Meta is also improving the Instagram safety, so under 16s will now need parental input to begin a live stream, and it also prevents younger teens from turning off nudity protection, again, unless a parent agrees to turn off nudity protection. Answers on a postcard. These features should be available in the UK, US, Australia and Canada from Tuesday. And I also have a very last minute surprise nib that no one knows about, but Barry reminded me at the top of the show, which not only is today's John Honeyball's Many Happy Returns, it is also, as near as we can get it, PC Pro's podcast's 18th birthday today. So Barry will be taking it out for a beer later. 9th of April 2007 was the first one, so it was actually yesterday, technically speaking. So happy birthday us.
Wow, I think that does make us officially the oldest technology podcast still going in the UK, at least.
There's very few podcasts that actually have more episodes that don't do like dailies and things like that. Your weeklies and your bi-weeklies. There's very few that are still on the air.
Yeah, but most of those are good, aren't they? Most of those are proper. The host is there for the whole time, for example. Weird kind of stuff like that.
I think we should embrace our fluidity, Tim.
Do you think so? Okay. Well, we will when we have the pint later. Okay, this is the hot hardware of the week, and it is with you, Roche.
Okay, so it's hot for okay. Well, it's new for me, and it's
Yes.
also hot for me. I'm gonna start by saying that. Okay, so what it is it's my printer, and it's a love story. It's the Epson ET 3850. Why do I love that? Well, okay. So first of all, there's a really easy setup. When I buy a printer, I just want a printer because I want to print stuff. I don't want to be spending half the day configuring it and figuring out how it works and wanting to know about everything. Just plug it in and go, and that's what it does. And you can print lengthy documents, but you can print lengthy documents and leave and go and make yourself a cup of tea. Or you
Doesn't
can
say
print
much about the
lengthy
print speeds. Roche.
What?
It doesn't say much
What?
about the print speeds, but sorry.
But you can go, like if you're going to print a lengthy document, like 200 pages, you can go. And the reason that that's important to note is because it means that your printer isn't jamming. But more importantly, you could print that document on both sides and leave the room and go make yourself a cup of tea because that printer isn't jamming. So then you don't have to fiddle around like you're some kind of like forensic expert pulling out tiny pieces of paper that are almost imperceptible to the human eye, sort of making yourself into a kind of a crime scene investigator just because you want to print a damn document. No, seamless. Hit print, there it goes. Double-sided, you want it on the flip edge, no problem. Now, what else do
What
I like about it?
I like, Roche, so far, sorry to interrupt, but your incredibly low expectations for a printer are a joy for all the printer manufacturers out there.
Yeah, this is all I want, man. Anyway, so what else do I want? I want ink that doesn't cost the earth
Yep.
in two ways. One, this isn't gold I'm buying, liquid gold. Like, why does it cost more than champagne? That is unacceptable. And then two, I don't want to be filling landfills with those little cartridges. Now, I had a brother, it died in about, yes.
To clarify,
I-
Sorry, my brain went the wrong way there.
Whimsical podcast suddenly went very south.
you had a brother
So,
printer, I believe, Roche, that died.
Yes, I had a brother printer, and it was in the days before the chips, and I used to be able to get the ink from Switzerland, and I could buy it for £20, and I could just, I mean, I still have those cartridges lying around somewhere, but at least it didn't cost me an absolute fortune to print out what I needed to print out. And I do a lot of printing because I like paper. Okay,
I like paper too.
yeah. Okay, so it doesn't cost the earth. So you're thinking, but what can you get for? You can get 14,000 pages if you're only going to do black and white, and you can get about 5,000 pages if you're going to do color. It brands itself as hassle-free. What more do you want from your printer? If you want a scanner, this is where I have a tiny problem. Okay, so the downside is the scanner. So you have to set up ScanSmart software, and then you have to feed the pages in one by one like a old photocopier,
Right.
I think. But anyway, then you
It
have
does.
to
It doesn't have an automatic document feeder, basically.
yeah, yeah. Like yeah, exactly for scanning. And then, so now that's a pig. So then that means that you have to do it like an old photocopier, and then go, oh, do you know what? I can photograph that quicker with my phone. And then I can convert it easily. I can just WhatsApp that to myself. And then I can convert it into text. Yeah. What?
So just to say, if you're listening to this rather than watching it, you're missing out so much. They say communication is so much about body language and hands, etc., and eyes, and it's definitely true for Roche on the podcast. You just missed. Basically, come and watch us on YouTube because it's you'll get the whole thing. It was about 50 minutes in. You can see this hot hardware. Sorry, do carry on, Roche.
Okay. Anyway, as a printer, it's peerless. As a scanner, use your phone. And you're probably wondering how much it costs. Well, it costs more this year than it did 3 years ago when it actually came out. So could I be accused of being an early adopter? No, I could not. But I'm passionate and a real cheerleader for the Epson now that my brother is dead.
Stop saying that, Rush. She's trying to win sympathy for the voters.
Yeah. For people joining late on YouTube Live, Roche's brother is her printer. It's not anything else. Okay. All right. So this, how much did you pay for this, Roche?
Like about £400, but that was with VAT, and I got 3 years worth of ink.
Yeah. And
I
so
haven't
just
made a dent in it. Yeah.
so to clarify for a couple of people who are watching live and asking questions on on Discord, yes, this is very much an inkjet printer rather than a laser printer, and you do have to. You can actually get these kind of versions of these as lasers, but no, this is an ink. You do have to add an inkwell. So you just pour it in at the end, because I've got one of these, and you just and I wouldn't go back. And you just at the time when the time is right, you get out your glugging bottle, you turn it upside down, and you shove more ink in there, and it's so much nicer than paying. This. It's so Cole Dragaskas on Discord. Just I'd pay £4 for a printer in 2025, and the whole point actually is you should be paying a high upfront cost, because if you're not, then you will be paying for it down the line in both ways that you talked about, Roche, in terms of the terrible disposable cartridges, especially now that everyone seems to be blocking third-party ink, and that. Oh, I always had trouble with that anyway. But Lee, did you must have had a lot of people coming in looking for third-party ink. What's your stance on it?
Tangentially, I don't tend to stock third-party ink because of the issues that historically people have had with various bits of firmware. Because the last thing I need as a retailer is people coming back saying this does not work, and particularly if it's some obscure brand that I just can't test. That's a cost to hemorrhage cash. So I will try and get original inks at the lowest possible price that I can, and recognise that though I will sell a lot less of them, what I will sell will work.
Yep. Okay. What else did we? What else do we need to cover? So, double-sided printing. Is it nice to look at, Roche? Does it fit in with your
With my wallpaper.
with your wallpaper at the back there?
No, I mean, it is kind of it. Look, it's a black box of ugliness. Which, by the way, that is a good point. Why don't they make it a lot prettier? Do you know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't hurt that it would be aesthetically pleasing. And why do they all,
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Because
can eat a
basically
different color.
it's the same machine since 1986. They just put a different box on it. Can I just ask you one thing, Roche? Because lawyers are about the only sort of rate of people on earth that still use fax machines, and I've noticed this has got a fax element. How is it on faxes for you?
Right. So I do not use the fax element.
Outrageous.
But you are right. That's a weird anomaly. That's the only profession that's hanging on to faxes. Yeah. Don't know why that is.
There's still some countries that use telexes. I'm pretty sure there's some economies where it's still required. I think somewhere like Germany, they still need some sort of backup when you agree a contract. I'm almost certainly wrong in that. Okay, I think we might be at the position to take a vote.
Right.
About who's going to be in charge? Oh, two of you. Come on, guys.
I'll delete mine.
Another time.
Right, there you go.
Sorry, Barry.
Again, showing the professionalism of this podcast, Barry and Lee posted the hot hardware, hot or not, at the same time. I wonder why Barry had gone so quiet. It's probably because he was trying to work out how to do it. Trying to remember. But Lee's is superior because it has icons. All right, so let's ask within the group, Barry, hot or not?
If I was going to buy an inkjet printer, I'd probably go. In fact, I just bought a printer recently. I ended up going for a Brother LaserJet, the Brother LaserJet that everyone gets recommended to buy, just for almost all of the same reasons that Roche just elucidated in terms of ease of convenience, and it just works. And I don't need to buy the bloody ink every 6 weeks at 50 quid a hit. But mine was mainly only used for the kids' homework and stuff like that. So, and that's still 50% of its output. But So I've gone laser rather than inkjet. But if I was going inkjet, I probably would have used one of the eco tanks. So go on, Roche. I'm going yes. Hot.
Lee.
Cards on the table. It's an inkjet printer, and I couldn't be less excited. However, what does please me about this is, apart from Roche's absolute passion for it, is her experience in the setup and configuration. Because over the last few years, some printer manufacturers have made this unbelievably complicated. And one particularly more than others, and I won't sort of embarrass them by naming them here. I'll just use their initials, which are HP. And if my shop had a league of the most complicated devices to set up, HP printers would win by an absolute country mile. And I'm pleased to see that Epson has a better process. Though I must admit, on the few that I've set up recently, they require you, I don't know if Roche found this, that they require you to turn on location services before the software will proceed, and there's a box that comes up in the middle. So if you've got that off on Windows, you have to turn it on before the Epson software will go in. I presume this will be something to do with their subscription service, ReadyPrint, which incidentally will be featuring in my PC Pro column not next month but the month after, and gives you an unsubtle hint as to which hole I was dragging a customer out of this week. So all said and done, I am delirious that Roche is pleased with her printer. But I'm afraid it leaves me absolutely stone cold. And I did find it on Amazon earlier today for £269.
Oh, did you? Bargain. All right. Well, I'll go hot. Roche. I must admit, I'm not exactly excited, but I, as a category in general, I do actually like this form factor, and I would never go back to a cartridge-based printer again. So on that basis, it's hot. Roche, I think I know which way you're going.
Yeah, definitely. Hot.
Okay, so let's find out how people have voted. And it's 58%, 58% or 59%. It's going, of course, it's live. It's just like BBC. This is 59% have said hot, and 41% have said not. So it's a clear win. But also, Roche, you can't see Discord, so you don't know that Running DAC, and don't start this Running DAC, this is just a once only vote. Running DAC has done a Roche's delivery of the hot hardware, hot or not. And you've got 87%, well, you've got 13 votes saying yes, and you've got 2 votes saying no. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to out the people who said that you were bad. So the people who voted against you, Roche, the haters, the Roche haters, are Daz
Disappeared.
Oh, no. Yeah, there we go. No, he's come back. Daz Demore and Dr. XXX. So there you go.
Dead to me, you people.
Yeah.
Dead to me.
Yeah,
Is that like your brother? I forget how this finishes off.
Oh no, and Dr. XXX, or maybe there's an accidental vote. And I think they might have got it switched over. Anyway, all right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Donald Trump in charge of the podcast is singling out the critics. Unbelievable.
Don't try and make me do my Donald Trump impression, because nobody wants that. All right, thank you very much, everyone, for listening to the podcast, and hopefully you were here for the whole of it, unlike me. Until our next podcast next Thursday, which you can join live on YouTube on the PC Pro channel, or join us also on Discord, pcpro.link/Discord. We will see you then. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye. There is echo, isn't there? Someone is echoing.
It's Tim.
Leaky headphones dance.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Big enough.
Sorry, guys. I
tried to turn it down, but I couldn't.
Yeah, it says this can't be changed during recording. So.
What are those headphones? They are enormous.
They're Sennheiser. They're nice.
The Princess Leia Memorial headphone.
Can work on a bit of sound insulation on them.
They're open headphones. That's what they're.
Why are you using open cup headphones on a podcast, you pillock?
Yeah. Do you know what? That's a good point. But actually, normally it's just because I had to rejoin and I forgot to put echo cancellation on. So you'll have to forgive me, Barry.
Right.
These amateurs can't work with these people.
But that's such a good point that Lee's made. Like, about the Princess Leia sort of buns. No, but why don't they, like,
That's
why
got a
don't they
different meaning.
make, why don't, oh.
Tell us about Carrie Fisher's buns again.
This is what you get on the red button.
No, Colin, what
Yeah.
were you saying about Princess Leia's buns?
Well, because they all like why aren't designers coming up with some funky looking headphones? Why do they all look like headphones when you could have, Princess Leia's bun on the
I
side?
guarantee you, if you look hard enough, there'll be a Princess Leia, unless what are they called? Star Wars is company.
George
I give it
Lucas.
half an
Lucas,
hour
yeah.
before someone on Discord has AI'd Tim with Carrie Fisher's ass on either ear.
Arse. This has definitely gone into red button territory.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think this is quite a good point to say goodbye, isn't it?
Not what I
After,
meant.
sorry.
Right,
That's not what I
Darren will
meant.
be back next
Bye.
week. It'll be normal.
Yeah, I'm off for a couple of weeks as well, so I think
Yes.
sanity should be restored. Oh God. Okay. All right.
Right.
Thank you.
See you later.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right, I have pressed the off.
And then
There we go. We're gone again. Upload, upload. Oh no, you're still uploading, Tim. I'll sit here. Don't panic.
Yep. Yep. Flawless.
Oh, hang on.
pods-
No, hang on. You've got a spurt on. Here we go. No, I daren't go anywhere just in case it doesn't arrive. Hold on.
No, I'm holding.
Thank you. Meanwhile, here's some music.
Maybe you can sing.
Maybe I